Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett with another leadership briefing. This one's called Project Rescue and Success Assurance in AI and Digital Transformation. And today we've got Tory Bjorklund, who's the founder and CEO of Victoria Fide Consulting. Hi, Tory.
Hey, Alex.
Before we get started, watch all of our videos at technologyexecutivesclub.com. Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett again with another interview with my good friend Tory Bjorklund. Tory, how are you?
I'm doing great, Alex. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You are the founder and CEO of a company called Victoria Fide Consulting. There's a really cool story about that name. In Latin, it means
Yeah, success assurance.
so Victoria Fide Consulting means success assurance.
Yeah, what we do is we help companies ensure that they can successfully transform through the use of technology. We're a consulting company that helps other companies with digital transformation. Oftentimes, what that looks like is we're helping companies to rescue their failing digital transformation projects. Ideally, we would help them to prepare to succeed before they start so we don't have to come in and rescue them later. So we've got a process that we help them utilize to prepare for those projects and to execute those projects successfully.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've talked to you a number of times now, and I know that you have this incredible framework that helps companies proactively minimize the risk of these big projects. AI is all over the news, and everybody's working with AI. I know you do a lot of work with AI projects. AI projects have 95% reported, but big projects by themselves, I've heard 68% project failures. Regular projects, ERPs, CRMs,
Yeah,
right?
that's right. In fact, ERP projects typically fail at a higher rate than some of the other projects. So if you look at ERP projects just by themselves, you're closer to the 80 to 90%, depending on whose numbers you're looking at. I'll just give you an example. Partly it depends on how you define failure, right? So we've
Yeah.
had a client, for example, that contacted us and they implemented an ERP system. And the reason they contacted us is they were running on it. They were running live. And they said, we're far less efficient than we were before we implemented the system. And we would like to know if you could help us with that. So we came in, we did an assessment, and we determined that the company that helped them implement that ERP system didn't do a very good job of understanding what they actually needed from the
Yeah.
company and from the software. And the software was capable of doing what they needed. It just wasn't implemented properly. So we did a re-implementation just of their production area, just of the manufacturing area, material requirements planning and production planning for that company. And they just had a huge increase in the way they were doing it, which was with spreadsheets rather than the expensive ERP system that they had just implemented.
What are the kinds of projects and typically the kinds of companies that you're doing these types of projects for, whether it's project rescue or more proactive kind of work?
Well, of course, today all the big talk is about AI. And so
Yeah.
we've got a lot of AI stuff going on.
Yeah.
But it's not just AI. Obviously, companies are implementing ERP systems. We help with that. CRM systems. We just started a CRM rescue here recently. Manufacturing execution systems, warehouse management systems. Primarily, we focus on the manufacturing and distribution companies in the mid-market.
We have a lot of those companies in our peer group. So I know these are the big systems that really run the main operations of the company, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. And a lot of the AI really, they want it to interact with those systems. So they have to have that part right in order to succeed with the AI projects.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's talk about Project Rescue, and then we'll talk about the more
Sure,
proactive framework that you've developed for people. Tell us a couple of stories about some of
sure.
these project rescues that you've helped people with.
Sure. It's not just AI projects that need rescuing. I'll lead with that since
Mhm.
that's what a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
had
yeah.
recently two companies that merged and they had a lot of HR needs. They had people, there were a lot of changes to the benefits and so forth. The HR department wanted to put in place a chatbot basically that allowed their
Oh,
employees to ask questions and get answers and specific questions about their available PTO and things like that. And they had been working on this, and it just iteration after iteration after iteration, they could get absolutely nowhere. And when we came in, it turned out that the main thing, they had their marketing department and their HR department working on this project, and they had nobody that understood the technical nature of AI and the data that's required. You can't just allow anybody to be asking questions about their neighbor in the cubicle next to them or something like that from an HR perspective. It was just that kind of a situation. We came
Wow.
in and did an analysis of what are you trying to accomplish? What are your objectives? What are the areas? And the first thing we said is, you're trying to bite off way too much here, and you're picking the riskiest area of your business. Let's do a pilot project. Let's get
Yeah.
it a small little bit. And within 3 weeks, they had a pilot project up and running, and were gaining some trust from their users internally and proving to the executive team that they could actually get some value from this before we move forward. It was just a matter of weeks to get that turned around and out of the ditch.
That's a great story. And if I'm listening to this, maybe there's this AI project that you're working on, you need help. Tory and his team can help you with that. But I know more seasoned CIOs that know exactly what you're talking about, but they just might have a bandwidth issue. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. But not just with the AI projects. We did some work for a
Yeah.
fairly large company that had a very seasoned CIO
Yeah.
working for them. And actually, I knew him personally. He contacted me. He said, we're in the middle of this large ERP rollout, and we got one area that's in the red, and that's our
Huh.
data migration. Can you come and
Oh,
help us with that? And we came in, and they had an employee that was in charge of that in their IT department, and he was leaving. That was one of the reasons it was in the red.
well, yeah.
It didn't take very long for us to realize that they had bigger problems than they thought that they
Huh.
had. And it wasn't just in the data migration and data transformation area. Also, their integrations were having problems and so forth. Long story short, we ended up helping them put together a center of excellence for integrations and data migration and get that ERP project back on track. A lot of the other areas were fine, but this was going to be really the result of a failure. And they were already months behind. It was a large project. They were already months behind because of these data problems, and it really turned out to be bigger than that. But we can just come in, help in a particular area, get it
Yeah.
back on track. And like you said, sometimes it's a matter of bandwidth, sometimes it's a matter of asking the right questions.
That's a great story. The CIO called you and said, look, I know we're sliding in this area, and he knew you.
Yeah.
And you went in thinking you're just going to help with the data migration, and then you were able to go back to him and say, hey, this is a lot bigger. These are the other areas you got to fix. You really saved him.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons they call us, because we'd been involved in a
Uh,
successful ERP implementation with the company he was at previously.
Previously, got it. That's a great story. So you've told us one about a AI project, as ERP project. I know you do a lot of CRM work too. You want to share one of those stories?
Sure. We have a client that they called us primarily because they were having trouble with their customer portal. And they brought us in, and their customers were frustrated and whatnot. They'd rolled out a new portal and their support portal. And we did an assessment on that. And it turned out, again, they had much larger problems than they realized. And as we were talking to the stakeholders, both on the client side and the support side, we kept hearing a lot of other related
Yeah.
problems that they wanted to talk about. And it really turned out that their CRM implementation itself, that this customer portal was built on top of, was not implemented in a way that was very usable. That they had really not done a good job of the analysis. And again, in this case, it was the support people were doing the implementation, but then expecting the salespeople to use the CRM system. All the upstream work necessary to be useful to their clients, to their
Uh-huh.
customers, was not done properly. And it was only done for the purposes of support. Anyway, it was a problematic situation that we came in, we determined where the root causes of those issues were, did a re-implementation of the both the CRM and the customer portal.
Oh,
And that was quite a major project that turned out they thought was a pretty minor issue.
in this case, you're saying that the problem was that the support people, they loved it probably because they created it for their needs, but the reps weren't really involved or the reps weren't represented in the way that they should have been. Is that what I'm hearing?
The reps hated it and the customers hated it.
Even
So
more
what?
important.
Your support person loves it. If your customer can't get the support that he or she needs, who cares if the support technician loves it? There are two sides of that issue. One was they didn't take into account all of the stakeholders, the customers and the salespeople that they were expecting to use the system. And then secondly, they didn't utilize the capabilities even of their IT department with project management and best practices and things like that. They figured this is a job that we can roll this CRM system out. We had this previous one. We know how it's supposed to work, and we'll just bring in some consultants and get this thing rolled out. And it didn't go well.
This has been great, Tory. These are great stories, and I know you can really go in depth on a lot of them. Why don't we shift over to the other part of your practice, which I know you really enjoy also, which is proactively helping people minimize the risk up front. And you've actually have a framework for project success. That's what the whole name of your company is about, success assurance.
Right.
Right. So tell us a little about how you created this framework and maybe an example of a project where somebody used that framework and was successful and eliminated most of that risk.
As you mentioned, that's really the purpose of the business. This is what we would prefer to do. I'd rather not be having to pull people out of the ditch and help them stay out of the ditch in the first place. Victoria Fide is success assurance, and we started the company around the idea of helping others to succeed with digital transformation. Right. Certainly, we don't mind pulling people out of the ditch, but obviously they would prefer to not go in the ditch in the first place. Right. And that's why we started this business. And I've been in this since 1987, although they didn't call it digital transformation back then. Yeah. I've been doing this for a long time. And I spent a lot of time trying to evaluate what works and what doesn't work, and reading everybody else's information, books and studies and whatnot. And I put together this process for transformational change. That's what we call it, the Victoria Fide process for transformational change.
That's great.
And it really starts with helping those companies prepare to succeed. You have to prepare for success. And then based on that excellent preparation, you execute your plan. But then that's still not done. Then it depends on active participation to get the adoption that you need within your company for the changes that you made, the transformation that occurred. That's really in a nutshell what our process is about. Let me give you an example. I worked along with a client many years ago. They were an engineer-to-order manufacturing company, and they were having problems with a lot of rework. And this is just a simple example, but we came in and then they said, we're doing all this rework and we need you to help our engineers to get it right. We need a product data management system or something. And we did some assessment, and okay, we could have easily sold them a product because they were asking us, sell us some software that'll solve this problem. And it really turned out to be their process.
Interesting.
Engineers would release something to the shop, and then it would get manufactured and it would go to assembly, and they'd say, there's a mistake here. And somebody would put in the necessary form or something like that to tell the engineer there was a problem. The engineer would evaluate the problem, do a change to the part, and send it back down to manufacturing. And then the milling operator would go, oh, I just did one of these parts. And rather than take the edits and the changes, he would mill the same part again and send that back to manufacturing. And broken process. And part of that process was a lack of automation, and their CAM system, the computer-aided manufacturing system that the operator used to load the part in and stuff wasn't automated. All of that handoff wasn't automated and so forth. So we did end up bringing in some other automation, but mostly what we did is we changed their process. We understood where the real problem was and got that process working so that the changes from engineering changes filtered through the rest of the system properly, and that their engineering system was talking to their manufacturing system, their shop floor control system, their CAM system, and so forth properly. And it saved them probably hundreds of thousands of dollars just to fix that one process. That was a relatively small fix, but let me give you a much larger example. We were called in to a wheel manufacturing company, and they said, we've got an inventory problem, and we really need to implement some more just-in-time inventory capabilities and things like that. And again, we tried to understand where the problem really resided. We helped them to get a handle on it. What turned out as we did the assessment is, yes, they did have an inventory problem, but they didn't know where it was stemming from. And trying to get to just-in-time inventory, they had missed a very important component. They had no idea how to accurately forecast the demand for their product. The real problem was that they were ordering all kinds of material based on the possibility of all their different products that might be ordered, but they had no way of knowing what the demand was actually going to be. And we actually spent more time on their demand planning process than on their material requirements planning process. And as soon as we helped them understand that their distributors had much more information than they did about what was happening in the market, and just by implementing a process that allowed forecasts from their distributors to come through to the manufacturer and having their salespeople incentivizing their distributors to provide that information, they got their demand planning in place. And that made a huge difference. They actually lowered their cost of holding their inventory by 75%.
That's huge.
It's huge.
I hear this problem all the time with the manufacturers that are in our group.
Yeah, they were looking at building another warehouse to hold all their inventory, and they eliminated that plan as a result of getting their demand planning figured out. And they didn't have demand planning, and they didn't have good material requirements. They did implement those systems, but they could have implemented, if we had just done what they were asking us to do, they would have implemented material requirements planning, they would have implemented production planning and all of that, and not solved the problem because nobody was talking about demand planning.
It was costing them a lot of money, 70% plus. That's a huge win. That's a huge win. That's great.
And then let's talk about AI just for a second. You mentioned the MIT study where they said 95% of these 300 enterprise companies that they had interviewed and studied, 95% were getting zero return on their AI investment. And it was $30 to $40 billion of AI investment, by the way.
Wow.
You imagine no ROI on that. Now, the number one issue that they identified was that people's reluctance to use a new tool, just standard what we call organizational change management.
Yeah.
That's not a technical problem.
No.
A lot of these things do not fail because of technical issues. And sometimes technical issues play a part in that. But a big part of it is understanding that people are a big component to successful digital transformation, and processes are the biggest component to successful digital transformation. Technology is absolutely the smallest part of the digital transformation equation. So you have to get your people and processes right way before you think about technology. And that's what our process for transformational change is all about.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Boy, that's a great way to wrap it up. Such good insights that you shared. And everybody, Tory's going to be doing some other videos with us, right, Tory? We're going to share other stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to.
If somebody is watching this right now and they're in the middle of a project that they know is failing and they need help, project rescue, or if they're planning a big project and they want to have that project assurance, right? Success assurance. They want to have that success assurance that you can give them. What are the steps that they should take to sort of take that next step to either reach out to you, or maybe you've got some resources that can help them?
We have a lot of resources at victoriafide.com, and that's just for spelling and everything is Victoria, FIDE.com.
Yep.
For example, we've got a list of our services there. One of them is recovering ERP projects, for example. You go there And there's a button right there to get more information, to reach out to us. Absolutely, somebody will get back to you right away. If they reach out to me directly on LinkedIn, as you mentioned, I'd be happy to get them whatever information. It's really a matter of just asking a few questions, and then we can understand what it is that they need.
That sounds great. And everybody watching, if you want to connect with Tory, just you reach out to me and I'll connect you too. All right, this has been wonderful. I'm already ready to hear all your stories. Everybody, I've been talking to Tory offline. He's got so many great stories. And you can tell you really know your stuff, Tory. We're grateful to have you involved to help our community with their digital transformations and give them the
Yeah.
same type of success assurance that you're looking to help people with. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. That's a lot of fun, Alex. Appreciate it.